The highly disturbing case of the SS Ourang Medan challenges our beliefs about facing certain doom. That extra part at the end.
That gets ya. This is very interesting. It's like some Malaysian like story, like
Ghost ship?
kind of like unknowing. I don't know. We'll learn a lot more about it. All I know is there's a game about it.
Interesting. Do we have to play that game on Tri-Fate Gaming?
Would you guys watch if we played that game on Tri-Fate Gaming?
We've been checking out some like Malaysian ghost stuff. Actually, we've been checking it out for technically like a few years at this point,
Yeah.
but we're back into it now, and now we're going to check out Ghost Ship. Here we go.
In 1947, a disturbing distress signal was sent out kind of in all directions, like a blind distress signal from some point in the Indian Ocean. Numerous American, Dutch, and English ships, along with other international listening stations, heard this distress signal. And once they triangulated where it was coming from, they sent out a search party to go see who needed help. When they arrived on scene, they discovered something that would become one of the most famous maritime mysteries of all time. This is the story of the SS Ourang Medan. What's going on, guys? Mr. Ballin here. I was a Navy SEAL for a little while, and now I tell strange, dark,
Very
and mysterious
casual way to
stories on
say
the
that.
internet. YouTube is my new passion, and I'm going to be posting at least 2 times a week going forward. And if you like this kind of content, please right now hit like on this video and subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss any of this stuff. Thank you very much. Before we get into the story, I want you guys to be looking at this through the lens of trying to decipher whether or not you believe this really happened, because
ready.
there is
My
a
lens
large
is
percentage
activated.
of people that
I'm
say
like
this
Tom
is
Hanks
just
in the
an
Da
urban
Vinci
legend.
Code.
However,
Never seen that
there
movie,
is a
so I don't
couple of
really know what
details
it
that
does.
make it
I don't
really
either.
hard to just write off. Number
it's a
one,
mystery.
you have a number of international ships and listening stations that all reported hearing this same distress signal, and it's a very unique
Okay.
distress signal that we'll get into. In addition, you have the U.S. Coast Guard in one of their, fairly credible publications published a story about this case 5 years after it happened. And then you have the fact that this case has been around since 1947. It's been 70 plus
A long
years,
time ago.
and no one's officially debunked it. So let's dive in. In 1947, several Dutch, American, and English ships, along with a number of listening stations, picked up the strange distress signal that was coming from somewhere in the Indian Ocean. The distress signal, which was in Morse code, went like this.
An officer, including the captain, are dead, lying in chart room and bridge. Possibly whole crew dead.
Then there was a burst of indecipherable Morse code, and then it ended with 2 words.
I die.
Then silence.
I died.
One ship that heard this
What?
distress signal was the Silver Star. It was an American vessel that was kind of patrolling the waterways around the coast of Malaysia. And with the help of other ships in and around the Indian Ocean and some of the listening stations, they were able to triangulate the location of this distress signal. And they pinpointed a ship called the SS Ourang Medan that was located right at the end of the Strait of Malacca, which is the primary shipping lane between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. And so
The Malaysian
this ship was
ghost
basically
boarded
drifting out towards
ship?
the
I
Indian Ocean.
guess.
And so the first thing that the Silver
Whale
Star
man,
does is they
probably.
try to send a message back to the Ourang Medan. But after numerous failed attempts, they decide, the captain of the Silver Star decides that we need to go investigate because something is obviously not right here. So the Silver Star tells all the other ships in the area, along with the other listening stations, that they are going to be the search party. They're going to reroute and head for the Ourang Medan, because at this point, anybody that had heard that signal is saying, like, what do we do? Like, are we going to go investigate? Are you? After a couple of hours of heading straight for the Ourang Medan, they see off in the distance the ship. From the eyes of these very experienced sailors on the Silver Star, they knew almost immediately that this ship is dead in the water. It's just drifting,
by the
which
time
is
they got
not a
there.
good sign, especially if you combine that with the signal they got. As they get closer and closer to this ship, it becomes creepier and creepier because they're looking up, and in the bridge where the steering wheel would be, they can't make any person out. There's no one up there. There's nobody
Ghost
standing
ship.
on the edge. I mean, they just sent this distress signal. You would think with a ship that's dead in the water that they would be lining the outside of the ship trying to signal someone down. But no, it's just quiet. No one on board.
That'd be so
all
creepy to
lights off,
see.
just drifting bobbing
a foggy
in
day, it'd
choppy
be even
waters of the Indian
creepier.
Ocean. And so as they get closer, they start blowing their whistle to try to attract anybody on the Ourang Medan to signal them back. They're also doing more Morse code to try to get their attention again, not being picked up. And so finally, after all these failed attempts and just the general weirdness around it, the captain of the Silver Star decides, we need to board this ship. So these Silver Star crew members, they...
All right, you're on the ship. Your captain's like, all right, Isaac, you're going. You're first up. We're actually sending you in alone with only a flashlight.
And then at that point, I'd be like, oh, I remember Tyler, my friend Tyler over here.
Nope.
He was actually like, he said he would replace me anytime he needed.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that, and that's what I would say. And they say, okay, rock, paper, scissors, whoever loses goes right now. 1, 2, 3, go. All right, looks like you're going. So now you're going to kill the entire crew? You're going to kill
No,
it?
no.
Oh, okay.
knew before they boarded that almost definitely they were going to find something terribly wrong with this ship. There's just too many red flags about it. They were anticipating something bad.
Red flag.
But I don't think that they were really prepared for just how bad this was going to be. So they board the ship.
Everyone
and
just going
right
to be
away,
massacred
deck
on there?
is a number of crew members that had passed away. They're all deceased.
Yep.
And the mystery really kicks in the position, the body position of all of the dead crew members. They were all on their back with their hands outstretched in front of them as if defending themselves from some unseen assailant above them. Even
What?
strangers, they had this look of abject terror on their face, as if the final moments before they died were just excruciatingly painful and terrifying. Even the dog
What?
was in a position with its teeth bared. It looked like it was growling up into the sky. All of them. And so obviously the Silver Star crew members are, shocked at what they find. And they're kind of looking at each of these dead crew members and they're like, what is going on? So they make their way up to the bridge and everybody's also dead in the same position, basically fighting with some unseen assailant in their final moments before they pass. The person who had been sending out the distress signal had literally slouched over the telegraph. Like their finger was literally on the telegraph. He's the only one that was not doing this. He was on the telegraph and had passed away in that position. So they go down into the bowels of the ship. Normally, inside of a steel ship in the boiler room, it's going to be pretty hot. There's no real ventilation to speak of. Not to mention outside, it was over 100 degrees. They went down into the boiler room and down into the ship, and it was strikingly cold. Some of the crew members from the Silver Star said it felt like it might have been about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. They found more crew members also passed away, also fighting with something in the air, with that look of abject terror on their face. So all of the crew has perished in this very bizarre way. There was no overt damage to the ship. It just appeared that the engine had been turned off, but ultimately the ship had no real damage to it at all. They couldn't find anything. The crew, despite meeting a fairly unfortunate end, also had no signs of outside injury, external injury.
That's the weird. I was waiting for him to say if there was going to be any visible like stabs or anything, but nothing.
Like, so they didn't ever get. I wonder if they ever got like a body to do an autopsy. We don't know the cause of death.
Did Medusa fly under their ship?
Yeah, what
and,
the heck?
What? Is there a mythological creature from Malaysia that freezes people?
Very, very interesting.
Something had obviously caused them all to perish, but there was no injuries outside their body. In addition, all of them showed signs of rapidly decomposing. Considering they had just been tapping away that distress signal hours earlier, unless the person communicating the distress signal had been the last one alive for a long time, it doesn't really add up that they had decomposed as quickly as they had relative to when this distress signal was sent. So the captain of the Silver Star, taking into account all of the strangeness, decides not to touch any of the bodies, leave them where they are, get off the ship, tie a tow line to the Ourang Medan, and tow it in. We're going to have experts look at this and figure out what happened.
Smart.
And so they attach the tow line, the crew members of the Silver Star, and as soon as they begin to move it, they notice, the crew of the Silver Star, that smoke has begun billowing out of the inside of the Ourang Medan. And so, not taking any chances, they cut the tow line and they literally jump back onto the Silver Star right as the Ourang Medan explodes. In fact, there was a quote which basically said it exploded with so much force that it was lifted out of the water entirely and then splashed back down and rapidly sank. So now you have no evidence. You have the testimony of the people that were on the ship, but other than that, you have no evidence. The ship is now gone. The captain of the Silver Star and his crew just have to go back to the mainland to try to make sense of what they just saw, because you have all these people that were involved and want to know what happened, and they're like, well, let me tell you, we saw this horrible thing on board and then it exploded and it disappeared. And so that's where the mystery kind of ends. But here we go. Let's get into what the primary critique is, because that's important to hear too, and then we'll hear the rebuttal, which I think is also pretty important. So
primary critique. There's no video recording of it in 1947.
Yeah, probably no like firm evidence or something.
Yeah.
It's all based on stories.
This is very interesting. The fact that it blew up and all of the evidence is gone now makes it a little more sus.
Yeah, and yeah.
Story is just a legend will point to the fact that there really isn't a good record of the SS Ourang Medan ever existing. There's this one very important publication called Lloyd's Shipping Registers where you would expect the Ourang Medan to be registered, but they're not. Others will say that, well, Ourang Medan translates to man of Medan, and Medan is near it's near Sumatra, and that's where they were registered. So they weren't in Lloyd's shipping registers, they were in another registry. But either way, there is contention around whether or not this ship ever existed. But for those who say that this could be true, they say that, well, there's a good reason why those records don't exist, because someone's trying to cover it up. According to a German researcher who had spent decades covering the Ourang Medan case, he published in the Death Ship on the South Seas, it's a publication from 1953, that the Ourang Medan was transporting illegal materials, things like nitroglycerin and potassium cyanide. These are things used to create weapons.
Blow up then?
And there might have been a leak that led to the death of everyone on board. No physical injuries, but they passed away. And then also, after they tied that tow line, the materials could have detonated. You know, perhaps they detonated, that kind of thing. And so that still leads some questions, right? I mean, then how did the Silver Star crew not also get exposed to these chemicals as soon as they got there?
Yeah.
Either way, it's a fascinating
And like the people that were on the deck of the ship, if they're on the deck of the ship, there'd be enough fresh air probably to at least weed out something, or like they can jump into the water.
And why would being poisoned make you go like this? Like, I don't,
This is very, very interesting.
It was so intriguing. And then there's like, oh yeah, and there's no evidence for it, by the way.
Yeah. Well, they made a game about it, I guess.
If it's a legend,
yeah.
Interesting.
What is your belief on this? What have you heard? What other information do you have to add to this video?
Yeah, what way do you have evidence that it actually happened? I know maybe if you're from Malaysia, maybe you got some like extra evidence that we don't get from just this video.
Yeah, so let us know. This is very intriguing. I was reeled into the story, but I want to know like more about it.
Let us know down in the comments. We will see you in the next one. Bye.